The idea is to go through the book and then bring other investors on. So we've got property management, preparing what's coming. There's, like I mentioned before, 32% of Americans either didn't pay or were late or paid partial on their mortgages last month. So when you hear that number, 32%. So I even looked at it like this. If my database was 300, let's think of that. Database is 300. 92 people or 96 people, or Chaz is on the call, he's good with the numbers. 32% of that database, 90 something people, didn't pay or paid partial. So my thought, you know, for what you said, Jackie, my thought was, am I having these conversations with my database? Am I finding where they are? Because the foreclosure and the short sale market is going to come. So Jackie had said, how do we prepare what's coming? What are the trends we're seeing? And then I heard leverage for additional income. Like as you start to accumulate, I can't say that word. As we start to gather properties, thank you, Jennifer. As we start to gather properties, then how do we use that one to snowball into the next one? And that's a great question. Okay, what else, guys? What else would you like to get out of these 5 classes?
How about where to get started, money lender, stuff like that?
Yes, that will be a great one that we're going to bring when we bring our investors on. That's already a question I have. So Lisa, thank you. Where do we get started?
And software, do they use certain softwares? Because I'm taking an investment class that I signed up for, that I paid them for, and they have a software called Real Estate Success something.
Yeah.
That helps you find deals and figure out if you're going to do lease to own, your exit strategies.
Okay.
So are they using anything to track their business and stuff like that?
Awesome. All right. Couple more. What else? We're going to do another minute of it, and then we're going to start to dive in.
Actually, maybe to that question, and because I'm, again, scratching the surface on, I know you're putting more down, and so some of those, maybe it might be good to have a lender come on.
Okay. So maybe someone who, because there's also this concept of hard money versus, you know, regular lending stuff. Good. All right, guys. Okay. So how many got a chance to read the first almost 100 pages? Yep. No, if you didn't, don't worry. Okay. What I'm going to ask of you, does anybody not have the book? Does everybody have a book?
I just got mine yesterday.
You just got your yesterday. I know.
Amazon.
Good. Okay, Amazon, I know.
I don't have the book.
You don't have the book yet. Okay, Allison, we need to get you the book then. I know that the office has some because we had them order some. I don't
ordered mine next day on Amazon. I got it yesterday. So.
Oh, that's true. You could do Amazon. That's true too. Okay. So when I was as I was reading through the book, now I will tell you, so I'm geeking out on this. I know, Jackie, you said thanks for having us read this. I also put it on Audible, and right, to do both. One, because if you look at my book, when I start making notes, I have tabbies, I have highlights, and then I also have my iPad that I write notes on. So I've doubled up on it a little bit. So one, that I can be prepared to teach this to you guys, and two, so I'm going to do it. So what I'd like to start out with, if you guys are okay with, I want to kind of give you, well, first off, just in case you don't know who I am, Kimberly Horn, was a team leader for Tampa for 6 years or so, MAPS coach, Bold coach now. I've got a team in the Tampa area, and this wealth building, I can't clearly work in my office either very easy. This wealth building this is my passion right now. This is kind of really what has led me to some of the decisions that I made when I started to really align my values of what I really wanted for my world. I have 3 kids that are under the age of 8, 8-year-old boys, a 4-year-old daughter, very modest upbringings. I mean, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. Grew up on a dirt road, 1-income family. My father was amazing, worked in a mill. My mom was a homemaker. Best childhood ever. And then I got into the Keller Williams world, right? And so like this itty bitty rubber band that was in this great little, area started getting stretched, and the possibilities of the world just started coming out. And so when I really started to align like what my big why was, and it's grown over the years, right? I've been with KW for almost 16 years now. It's grown in the sense of my big why right now is wealth building. And it's not for like my children, like they're going to be okay. I mean, I'm not sure unless you guys follow me on Facebook, I can't seem to keep teeth in my kid's mouth. Yet other than that, they're going to be great kids, right? Mine's also really about the legacy that I'm leading. Like, what is the legacy that Kimberly Horn stamps on the world? Kimberly Horn stamps on her family, her friends, the community, that kind of piece there. So wealth building is a massive part of what I am. So I'm also part of a wealth building. We call us the wealth building guru groups. Although I saw a cooler name recently, I'm like, I think I might change our name. And our whole idea is, when I started looking at all the different avenues of building wealth, investment has always been a desire of mine, and I've not put a lot of energy and effort into it because I really, quite frankly, didn't know how. And maybe like some of you guys, and I know some of the myths that we're going to talk about here was, I maybe don't have enough money. I don't know enough about it. You know, how am I going to do it? Where do I start? When I get it started, how does it go? Like that whole thing, Lisa, the software, all the different things that are out there. So fell into my first investment property. We moved to Tampa because we couldn't find a house to live in with 2 kids and I was pregnant. So we bought a townhome because we looked at rental properties. They were super expensive, right? And now it's just multiplied. So our wealth building guru group, I'm going to bring a lot of the things that we talk about there. We meet once a week, every single week, and we talk about that. We've even started to put together, which I'm going to give you guys some homework after this on top of reading. Yet, if you guys are truly invested in this class, I think this would be powerful for you. The vision of wanting to do it is a figment of my imagination right now. And it wasn't until I put it on paper that I was able to like kind of realize the steps I need to take. So we're going to talk about it near the end of the class about putting what you want out of this. And I don't know if I'll do it today or maybe because I don't have it pulled up right now. I'll share with you my 1 3 5 of the different investment opportunities that I'm looking at right now. And I'll ask permission from my wealth building group if it's okay if I share theirs. And if it's a yes, I'll show it if it's not. And then I'll ask every guest that comes on to share kind of what their thoughts are on this as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we had you read up until page 90, I think it was 96 or whatever. We probably are only going to cover the first 4 because when I looked at this a little bit deeper, the think part is going to be next week's because the guest speakers that I have on next week's are big thinkers. And I think it'd be best if we put the whole thinking part. So if you guys are okay with it, we're going to go through the first few tabs. Sound good? If you have questions or comments, you know, I'm glad that you guys are all on here. You can pop your faces on. I don't really care what you look like. I mean, you guys are all beautiful because I can see your eyes. And I can't tell
Hey,
you.
look what I'm doing right now.
What are you doing right now, Austin?
Okay, hold on, let me see. Okay, so
Oh, look at I love it.
so I'm at Palm Harbor right now, making the boxes for the fundraiser and the back to school drive.
Oh, I saw that. Super
That's
cute. I did see that today. Okay, let's first talk about the story Gary had with his son about in the car. Anybody have thoughts on that, just that concept and that story that he had with his son in the car?
Same exact conversation I've had with my son so many times.
Right?
Like, how to make money? How do I make money? And I'm like, oh, mow lawns. Oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds like a lot of work, you know, which is actually this is my big why, is that I want to become masterful in real estate investing to be able to pass that on to my family. I'm the only person in my family in real estate. And since I've been in real estate, all I keep thinking is, how did I not know this? How did I not know this? How did I not know this? I bought and sold, 10 houses on my own and lost a lot of money that I didn't realize until I got into real estate. So yes, and then also the Monopoly conversation too.
Oh my goodness.
We play Monopoly in my house. Xavier always wins. I always come in the middle, cause I'm too safe, I just don't want to be broke, which is how I live my life. And we're
going to talk about that in the book, right?
Yeah. So I loved hearing, Gary's books is like you're talking to him. It's like you're having a private conversation with him. And I love that he shared that because my son's 13. So it's the perfect opportunity to show him how you can really build wealth with real estate.
Yeah, I agree. And if you ever get a chance to be on any talks with Gary, he talks that way on everything. It's very much about that piece. And I'll tell you, my first conversation with building money with my sons was my sons figured out if they lost their teeth, right, when they fall out, they get dollars. And so one of them says, well, I'll just keep losing teeth it seems appropriate now that they've busted their teeth out. And that is not what it came from yet. I was like, well, that doesn't, you can't live life like that. That's not how it works. So I just thought the concept that he was having in the car is kids do think, and the kids aren't the only one, guys. How many guys have always been like, how do I get money fast, right? What's a short-term game? How quickly can I get some money? So I love that concept. I mean, I love that story that he started out with. What are some other stories you guys had out of that? Any other ahas?
No, I mean, I'm going through it right now with my 16-year-old also. You know, he could pressure wash, but he wants more of a social job. And so it's a matter of teaching them what we can and cannot do. So I'm hoping this, you know, shows them.
Love it. All right, anybody else? Brian, you're on mute, so I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I apologize. I didn't see that we were supposed to read that portion. It's funny. I got into real estate, becoming an agent after wanting to be a real estate investor, and I've kind of been stuck with the idea that my idea was I'm going to fix up my house and it's going to become my first rental, and then my wife and I are going to buy our dream house, our forever home, whatever. And so I'm in the middle of that remodel right now. It's taken me a while, but thankfully I found Gary's book, which led me to The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which led me to becoming an agent in KW. But I've been listening to Bigger Pockets podcast for a while now, and so I mean I'm totally ready to do it. I'm just going to take it slower than I thought, continue to grow as an agent, and make this my first rental, hopefully in the next 6 months.
Love it, Brian. That's exactly what I did. And if you guys didn't get to read, that's okay. You can still bring in your information.
I mean, I've read the book. It was just years ago.
Okay, that's fine. And we're going to get you. That's perfect. So, that was the conversation. I relate a lot with children, right? Because I have so many of them. And the concept, though, I also look back on how I've thought about it in the ways like, how do I make money? How do I make money? And it always came into a job. Now, I don't know the last time you guys have also read this book. And this is a great book to couple with The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, because Rich Dad, Poor Dad's with Wade Kiyosaki, and he actually was interviewed in this book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, is a great little couple to those pieces there on those two. So I want to tell you, I'm on page 5 of the book, if you want to turn to page 5. And I'm going to give you some ahas that I have. And then if you want to add anything, great. If not, we're just going to keep moving through this book. Sound good? You guys are a good group. I love the participation so far. You'll find that I love when you people talk with me. Okay, page 5 is on paragraph 2, and he says, I don't blame John for wishing that money comes easily. Anybody ever play lottery? Do you play the game with your husband, wife, partner, and says, if I win the lottery, I will, right? So we change the language in our house of when we win the lottery, we will. So just change that language because it's going to happen. And at the same time, it's a great way to start thinking bigger. But he said, there have been many times I wanted to believe that too, that money could come fast. He says, but here's the truth you can count on. Little money comes easy, big money doesn't. And then he skips down and he talks about small plans. It's the second sentence on the next paragraph. Small plans at best yield small results, and big plans at worst beat small plans. So when I want a big result, I need a big plan. The best outcomes in any of the life endeavors are almost always the result of a big plan powered by a persistent effort over time. So if I'm looking at a lot of the classes that we do with KW, with Bold, just anything we do, we always talk about what's the big picture, right? Are you thinking big enough? Think bigger. Some people can look at that big plan and go, it seems too big for me, right? This seems too much for me. I believe that we've got to put a big plan in place. And so that's what my hopes and dreams when we're done with this is that we'll all have a plan in place for this. So my coach said to me, she said, because I said, this is the income I'd like to make next year through these different avenues. And she says, great. Well, how much are you going to make from each? And I was like, I don't know. She says, well, if you don't know, how are you actually going to achieve that? So she's put me in that place of thinking through that piece. So I think we've got to put a big plan in place. I think that we can take small steps, learn what we need to know, and then we've got to be willing to make a move when we need to. And I love this one of a small plan versus a big plan. So like I put a passive income goal on what I'd like it to look like. Now my passive income right now is, I think it's right around $2,500 a month. My goal
That's
is
awesome.
50. Yeah, my goal is 50,000 a month. Right?
That's awesome.
That's a big plan, right? Now I'm here. Well, actually, I'm on the ground right now, and the plan's way up here. Now I've got to figure out how to get there. And I love when he says this because that's exactly what it meant to me when I thought about the big plan. And I one of my bold coaches said to me one time, if your goals aren't big, and if people aren't laughing at your goals, they're not big enough. So tell me what your thoughts on that are.
Well, that was kind of my inquiry into this conversation was who's to say what's big or little, right? Like Gary Keller, what is big for him at this point? I have no idea. The guy's going to own the United States or what? But so then that's kind of where I am in the inquiry because, you know, I'll just be honest. Right now, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of money for me. But it may not be big for somebody else. For somebody else, it might be small. So, you know, I guess that's what I'm trying to work out right now. And so in this book where he talks about buy a million, buy a million,
Think a million.
Yeah, the whole make a million part, you know? Yep. So I'm like, well, that seems big enough for me right now. I mean, given where we are, is that kind of what he's talking about? Like,
I don't think it's designed to be one way or not one way. So you guys remember, and forgive me if I bring up a lot of our other classes, yet that's just kind of my education is through everything I've taught or taken. Do you remember the bold exercise? Have you taken bold and they had you rank yourself in different areas and then you had to draw the circle? So the very first time I did that circle, my circle actually seemed pretty big, Jackie. It seemed like it was it was wonky, right? It wasn't completely a circle. Every time I took bold, the circle started getting smaller and smaller. And I was like, okay, I know that I'm doing more. I'm more successful. I'm making more money. What happened is my thinking got bigger. My thinking got bigger that the reality of where I was a much smaller space because I had so much room to grow. Right. So this is my thought when I hear you say this, and it looks like somebody was about to say something. So when I hear you say that is, think big for now. Because once you get there, you may say, okay. Chaz, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, think about your recent accomplishment. I mean, you just got that new Tesla. You're buying this first investment property. I mean, 3 years ago, would that have ever even entered your mind to do that? Like, the goals you set today are not going to be the goals that are your permanent lifetime. Like, I'm 85 and in the foot in the ground. Like, by that time you may have all the money in your world and your goal may be shifting to completely like, I don't want to touch anything except my grandkids and taking them to the park every day. Like,
right.
Goals are constantly changing every single day, or at least they should be.
Yeah.
Because you should be readdressing them, if not daily, I mean, at least annually.
You bet.
Yeah, because I really was one of those people that was like, oh, I have enough money. You know, he's interviewing that person in here who's like, I don't really need any more money. And over the last year and being on the ALC and some of the conversations that we've had about what's possible when you have the excess and what you can do, that's why to be in this conversation today.
Yeah.
So true, Chaz, is like even who I was last year to who I am today is completely a different person in that retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you live within your means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey,
what did you say?
He said live within your means.
So just make sure you keep living in your means because it can be easy and stressful to get ahead of yourself. In this game.
Thank you.
Hey, question, Kim, you mentioned that your goal was 50,000 a month. Why 50,000? What is that going to do for you?
Well, first off, I have a retirement. I have a retirement plan, right, of when I want to retire age by. 50 gave me the ability to travel monthly, not just in the US, travel monthly. It just gave me, I put together what I'd like to do when I retire by the age I want to retire, and 50 a month, passive, just passive. It wasn't everything else that we got going on. It covered all of that. Plus. So that was that's been my goal. I'm going to venture a guess, Brian, when I hit that. I will probably desire more. And here's the thing. I mentioned to you guys, I grew up on a dirt road. I mean, there was I think my dad might have made $35,000 or $40,000. I don't even know what he made because it didn't matter because we didn't care. And yet me thinking like this is like, I want to buy my mom a condo on the beach because she'd love it. You know, I mean, so it's thinking bigger than that. My sisters, I have 23 nieces and nephews, right? What kind of experiences could I give them? So see, when I start thinking about this, it's not me to get another pair of shoes because I don't need it, or a bag or clothing or whatever. It's about what will that do for other people and what will it do for me?
Sure. Yeah.
But it is about the shoes too.
It's always about the shoes. I love Chaz. He knows me so well. Okay. Any other thoughts on just the intro? I know we spent a lot of time just on that piece. Yeah, I think that was a powerful intro, just talking about that. Okay. Let's go ahead and go into, we mentioned on page, oh, I know what it was. I wanted you guys to look at page 8 and 9. And who did you most relate to on page 8 and 9? They gave you a couple people who talked about how they got into investings, where their upbringing was, what resonated with you, either I want to be that person or that sounds a little bit like how I'm starting.
Mine was, just as far as real estate goes, not even investment, was Wendy Patton bought her first investment property living in a hotel, made $20,000 a year and owed that much in student loans. But then as she started, you know, she's has bought and sold more than 600, houses,
Right.
And into real estate is just doing so much, so well and taking in so much in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that was so great. So you guys, I just want to reiterate. So Gary interviewed over 100 people, 100 investors who had a net worth of, they had $1 million worth of real estate, 60% in excess of $1 million, and they all had an average of 50 rentals. So there's some smart things going on here. Okay, who else? Who identified with someone?
It was really about the McKissicks, about their restaurant. So my family and my whole background is all entrepreneurial, and all my sisters and my mom and dad, they've all struggled, to run a small business and make money. And they've had times when they made a lot and times when they didn't make a lot, and but they work a ton and they just don't really get ahead, to have big money. And so I love the idea of being able to have real estate be that turning point for everybody in my family.
Well, yeah, I love that. McKissick, if you've never heard the McKissick story, it's an amazing story, and what they were able to do in a very small amount of time. I think sometimes we think we need to take a lifetime to get the results we want. I think, guys, we could be more purposeful about it and do more. Anybody else want to add something? Okay, so he mentioned on the next page what the investors have in common. He said what they did share was the burning desire and the readiness to change their lives, to succeed on their own, without a job or a boss, without a pension plan or a safety net, in an entrepreneurial world of real estate investment. This rang true to me. I'm with you on the Jimmy and Linda because I've heard their story, and I just want to be Jimmy and Linda because I want to have, I'm like the 50,000 passive seems a little small if I talk about Jimmy and Linda, and at the same time they have this made a lot of sense to me. And when we get to the job piece of it, I'll have more to say on that as well. This just made a lot of sense to me when it talks about the burning desire to have more in different avenues, especially when it says the readiness to change your lives, to succeed on their own and without a job or a boss, right? I mean, team leader, I just love the team leader role. It also put me in a little bit of I wouldn't be where I am without that role. So hear that, because I love it. I love I love every part about what I'm up doing. Yet it put me in a specific role that I can only stay in one lane. And at 45, 3 kids and a husband and more desires, I had to start opening the lanes up. And so I was able to do that by saying, I actually want to go and do something different. So that was a big piece for me. They got a plan and they implemented it with persistence and patience. How many guys are massively patient? Right? It's not even, I don't even know if I can spell it. Well, I probably can't spell it. And I know it's not in my DNA. that's the hardest part about building this right now for me personally is the patient you need to do this is a little bit difficult. I mean, just slowing down long enough to read the book has been a little bit painful, right? Okay, let's look at, let's talk about fear for a second. Go to page 11 and let's talk about fear. How many of you guys got smacked right in the forehead when you read this little section here? Anybody? No? Okay, good. I love that because I think fear is what holds. That might be why we have this group on the call and not other people on the call, right? There's a fear of just that holds people back. And I love when he said, fear keeps us from getting what we want, especially in matters of money. I can't tell you how many times when I'm talking to agents, recruits, my clients, my coaching clients, anybody that I'm speaking to, how quickly fear stops them from trying anything because of the fear of not being able to succeed. And that's a tough thing. That's a tough pill to swallow, I believe. Anyone can do it, not everyone will. I love the two important factors that he mentioned on building financial wealth through real estate is possible and building financial wealth through real estate is possible for you. Any thoughts you guys had on those few pages before we move on?
Well, I love that, anyone can do it, but not everyone will. Because I remember in Bold, the first time I did.
Where is that?
Page number
12.
12, yes.
I remember the first time being in Bold and looking around the room, and I'm like, well, how am I gonna do all this business if all these other people are doing it? Like, if they're doing the scripts and they're like, I don't have a shot. There's 100 people in here who have more experience than me. And he goes, yeah, but not everyone in here is gonna do it.
Yeah, not everybody there will do it.
It gave me so much confidence because I was like, oh, okay, well, I can be one of the ones who do it.
You're like, bring it on. Let's make this happen, right?
Yeah.
All right, what else, guys? I'm pulling up something I want to share with you guys, but what else? Okay. All right, let me share something really quick with you on the screen here. And it's going to come to the point that you just mentioned, Jackie, about not everybody will do it. Can you guys see my screen real quick? If you've been in one of my classes recently, I've taught this to the Tampa. I just taught it to the Bel Air. I'm going to be teaching it to the Palm Harbor office, I think, tomorrow morning. If we look at the success of agents, we can look at this in the investment side of it too. I should create this triangle for the investment side. 80% of the people stay down here. 15% move past this line here, and only 5% move here. I think when it comes to investment, these people never thought about it. These people thought about it and maybe want to do it. These people actually start to do it, and these do it big, right? So I may try to recreate that given the opportunity. Let's see. I don't want to promise something I can't make happen. And almost
How many rentals do you have, Kim?
I have 2 right now, and I'm looking at possibly an Airbnb and VRBO to start that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congrats.
All right. In almost every, so my playing field, Brian, is kind of small right now. I mean, honestly, it's small. Where I plan to go is much bigger, which is why this is great for all of us to get together. In almost every game, on page 16, almost every game, there are usually tried and true ways to win. And if you follow them, you may not win every time, but you will significantly increase your odds of winning most of the time. I want you to turn to page 20. This graph, or whatever you want to call this thing, made a huge difference for me. Did you guys see this? And what are your thoughts on that?
All right, you guys, my big mouth can't shut up, so I'm just gonna.
Oh, Jennifer, you raising your hand, or do you just pushing your arm? You're pushing your sleeve up.
Both.
Oh,
But
go ahead.
I would really say that this, like all things, you have a system and a plan in place. But you also need to have the ability to, I'll use this metaphor, it's probably not the best, but to jump off that diving board. Maybe you don't have to jump into the deep end, but do you jump in?
Yeah, love that. Okay, what else?
Yeah, for me, it's exactly what we're doing, right? We're using what other people have been successful at so we can start up the ladder. We don't have to go down here and have all those failures. I love that.
Yeah, so both of you, I mean, that's exactly right for both you guys. So here's the thing. When I look at this piece here and I look at the right side, so let me just take the real estate career. How many of you guys started out with KW from the beginning, and how many of you guys did another company prior to that? Beginning, different. Okay, how many of you guys did different companies first? Okay, me too. I was with Prudential first, then I went to Remax, then I found KW, and my life has changed. And I agree with that. So in Prudential, right, people didn't share ideas. They didn't give you anything. And it wasn't that, I don't think there was no culture for that, to be quite honest with you. So I look at that when I'm in the real estate world, and I look at that piece there and I go, that's the left side of this graph. I have to figure it out, and I got to go right and maybe change it and figure it out, you know, and there's a lot of turns and whatever. And yet I'm persistent enough to keep moving forward. Come to KW, they go, oh, you need to do this? Here you go. Oh, you need to do this? Here you go. In DC, I recruited a group of 3 guys that together they did 24 million. They're now close to 160 million in volume. And when we were in that interview, I said, what are your 3, you know, after lots of needs analysis, what are your 3 biggest issues? I said, great. I'm gonna have you talk to so-and-so because they've already done it, screwed it up, fixed it, and going on, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I said, they're gonna tell you what they did so you don't do what they did and you do the right way. Oh, and I'm gonna give you this person. So that's what the right side is to me, right? It's reading this and following the model. It's reading this and following the model. It's finding people who are doing it and just copying them. And then it's deciding, Jennifer, what you said. Do I wade in or do I jump in? Like, you know, how good are my floaties right now? How good can I swim? How much reserves do I have? Do I have enough that I want to do what I, you know, whatever it is, the game plan, right? Am I going to buy a townhome, you know, a townhome condo, single family, or a 4-plex? Right. It decides on that, right? You get to decide those different pieces. And so, you know, when I looked at doing all these different businesses, I thought, well, I could do it by myself and stay on this side, or I can run some businesses with other people and follow what they do and run at a faster rate. That was my thoughts. Okay. How about the story about the $100,000 that got away from him? He was at the beach with his wife I'm just going to paraphrase it so those of you who haven't had a chance to read this. At the beaches with his wife, place they visited often. Something came on the market. Agent asked if he wanted to buy it or see it. He said yes, want to buy it. They waited on it and then decided yes, and it was gone. And he said, had he bought it and sold it in a short amount of time, he would have made $100,000. What are your thoughts on that?
What's the fear kept him away from it? It
was fear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we get to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it, right? Like it's the fear of the unknown. It's like all these things that could go wrong. You could pay too much money, you know, the AC could bust, you don't, I mean, you could follow all the models to a T and, you know, try to figure out your cash flow, and then you still have capital expenditures that exceed what you thought it was going to, and, you know, and so all that comes into play. And so everything that I read and listen to is like, well, once you make your first deal, I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but then they just keep on getting easier and easier. And it's just like everything else in my life. And it's like, so I don't know. I've just built up, you know.
Yeah, Brian, you're absolutely right? Everything we do, there's a learning curve that happens. Yeah. We have to be willing to make it happen in a way that, I mean, we can use the word risk, right? At the same time, I remember my very first rental, and like I said, I bought it out of the fact that we didn't have anywhere to live and we didn't want to pay crap for rents in Tampa, right? And that was the biggest thing. And, you know, somebody had mentioned property manager. I think it was you, Julia. And so I ended up, was talking to a property manager, and I was like, oh, the cash flow, this. He goes, wait a minute. Does the rent cover it all? I said, yeah. Does it cover this? I said, yeah. He goes, so they're paying for your mortgage house.
Yeah.
What is your, he goes, what do you want to get out of it? I said, well, you know, this was a whole property. It's a rental property. Somebody also told me, like, every kid you have a house for them so that when they go to college, you know, you refi the whole thing, pay for college, and then the renters can repay for the house. And I'm like, brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lisa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I did. What we were just talking about, if he had a plan in place and knew exactly where he can go and what he could spend, then there wouldn't have been the question and he could have just purchased that without even hesitating.
Yeah, and this makes me want to jump so far ahead in the book, and yet I'm going to hold myself from doing that, right? Because they talk about the opportunity versus everything else. So great point, guys. I trust you're getting something from this, because I'll tell you, just talking with you guys, it's kind of lighting a fire. I'm getting a little warm over here. I'm getting hot. Okay, let's go on to page 2, which is the focus piece. And he brought up the triangle again. I think the triangle is like, we should coin it KW. Anyways, he talked about the criterias, the terms. So the criteria is what you buy. The terms, how you buy, and then the network, who helps you.
What page is this?
This is going to be on page 28.
Well, you skipped that part on 24 where he says, every morning you say to ourselves, I'm an investor, I'm building financial wealth. Is this the day I find opportunity and make a deal?
Thank you. And I had that
Anyway.
highlighted too.
Anyway,
That's a great one, right?
Yeah.
Every day you get up and you say, I'm an investor, I'm going to find the deal.
Yep.
I love it. I love that. Thank you. Hey, listen, y'all supposed to keep me honest. I'm just here to help.
I even put it on my business card, like, cause I'm not in it. So years ago I was in a filmmaker, but I put filmmaker on a business card and I became a filmmaker, you know? So I just figure if I do the same thing with investor, that'll help happen. So I say this too, but it's, you know, anyway.
Well, no, and that's so true. Cause you know, when Gary Keller had one office and 70 something agents, and it was a Gary Keller and it was a Keller Williams, he said, thank you for calling Keller Williams International. How can I help you?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Brian, there is power in your words always.
Yep.
I did skip one other part that I did. I bought it the way an investor would. I recognized the opportunity and acted on it, and many years later sold the property for just under $500,000 in net profit. This was on 26. I think one thing I've watched, and I watched this in the group that I'm in, there are some of the people in my group who literally go, I saw a property and I bought it, like within a week. And we're like, what? Right? Some of us are like, what is going on? Oh yeah, I just made 2 offers on properties. And then there's another person who's like, well, I looked at the numbers and I put the numbers in and then I redid the numbers and I did this and I now need to take something. Whoa. I think when we look at what we're going to invest in and what we are okay with, it's the wading in the water that Jennifer had mentioned earlier. When we look at that piece there, decide what you are willing to do so that you can start to act fast. The good deals are not going to be there long. So we have to be willing to jump on those. And so, Jackie, when you mentioned earlier about like, how do we, prepare for what's coming? I think you prepare by saying, if I find it within this range, it's mine. So we had a listing that in our neighborhood that is the lowest cost in our neighborhood, and it sold within like a day. And I did take a couple investors out there. I personally wasn't interested in it because it was a flip. I know for me, I am not flipping something right now. It's not in my wheelhouse. I'm a hold investor right now. I'm not a flip investor. That's coming. That's just not yet. If this was a flip investment. And so I brought investors a look at this property. So you got to also decide like what kind of investor you're going to be. I know this one just talks about investments. It doesn't say about which one specifically, and you have to decide that. So that we are honoring our time, let's move to page 31 at the bottoms. Your criteria, identify potential deals, your terms, determining the real deal, and your network to support all your deals. By the end of this, we should have a good support system that we're going to have on this calls. We'll also have a great network. I would say you need to start thinking, if I was going to be an investor, or not if, I'm an investor, right? Brian, he's got me thinking like, I'm an investor.
You're an investor. Yeah, you are.
What do I need to have in my pocket? So the contractors, all the different pieces that you think you'll need, you need to start looking at that to say, this is the piece I need. And as we bring people on to interview, I think they'll be helping us out on that as well. Okay.
And going back to what you were talking about, Jackie was talking about too, is that, I mean, I believe when you see, or when you opened up the conversation about 30%, whatever, people have missed a mortgage payment, or these forbearances are going to become due, and what we're going to see is a shift in the market. We're going to see all these houses come on the market for sale as short sales or what have you, and so we're going to see a buyer's market, in 12 months or 24 months, and there's going to be good deals. So if you position ourselves now, we can be ready to pull the trigger on those deals.
Good point. If you are cutting your expenses down to the nitty gritty, and then you're taking advantage of all the real estate that you can sell right now to build that pocket of income. Gary Keller's talked about $1 now will be about $5 in the future from what he's predicting. Now he doesn't have a crystal ball. He can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. And he's saying, prepare people, it's time. And we've been through 5 months of a little bit of chaos. It's not going to change. Just how well have you listened to everything that people have been teaching you right now, and how well are you preparing for that future?
And I would suggest talking with Keller Mortgage about possibly refinancing as well. I'm doing mine and my investment property. I just did the application today, and just those two, I'm going to save like $300, $350 a month, somewhere around there.
Chaz, I'm doing the same exact thing. I've already been working on I already had the process started for the house and then the investment piece as well. Yeah.
I heard something kind of different. I heard unload the ones that aren't really cash flowing much, so then you can get ready to buy more whenever the prices go low.
Well, Gary Keller had mentioned it kind of got pulled in different directions. He said he had some underperforming properties. And he actually went on later, he was on a team leader call, or my MAPS coach, I can't remember which one. And he said, listen, when I said that, I didn't just say I was selling properties. He says, I had already maxed out the potential in this property. I could sell it at a really good rate. It was kind of underperforming where my level of thinking was. And so he sold it at a great rate to reinvest it. So if you have something that's not performing well, you betcha. You need to look at that. Would that be the right thing? When I look at the couple properties I have, the townhome I have, we bought it for, I think, 180. It's now worth 230, 240, and I'm getting the highest rent ever. And I think I owe 100 and maybe 20 on it or whatever. So it's a great value, right? There's a whole process on that. Nothing I've purchased yet is it that. So yeah, Allison, good point. And you have to look at that.
If she refis that, she's going to be making even more monthly on that one.
I know. Chaz, yes I am. Yes I am. I like that idea. Okay.
Kimberly, is that I was at family reunion. I don't think it was this year. I think it was last year when Gary was saying that, we are the first ones to find the deals. We're the very first ones. And he said, if you're not buying real estate, you're not really in real estate. Like, you're just like a salesperson, basically. That really impacted me, because I know that during the market crash, a lot of people made a lot of money, right? Because they picked up properties super cheap. And so that's what I'm looking like. Okay, how do I be prepared to take advantage of what may happen? We don't know if it's going to happen, right? But I'm kind of seeing the same thing Brian is seeing, like, how do I set myself up to be ready to take, to pick up some of those properties?
Well, I also will tell you that you can buy investment properties with Keller Mortgage as well, because they helped me invest one. So,
I would just like to kind of dig in on that just a little bit more. So, like, let's say back in, 12 and 13 and 14, when I was getting things in the teens and the 20s, 30s, all the way up to 50s, and like Progress Village, Claremont, well, those are going like 135, 140. So would you say on something like that, when most of my investors are probably paid that off, would you say like those are the ones you would unload, you think?
If they're still performing, I wouldn't unload anything. I would hold on to what you've got. I don't know that I would unload anything unless
change their criteria.
What's that, Chaz?
Unless they've also changed their criteria.
Yeah.
You want to be evaluating what your criteria is for what you consider a good investment. Mm-hmm. So for me, I would rather have a newer house with less maintenance and in a better neighborhood where I don't have to worry about the tenants and worry about appreciation, instead of a better cash flow and be somewhere like Progress Village. They may want to sell those and buy something different, or they may want to double down, because while foreclosures and stuff may step up a little bit, the fact of the matter is we have 2 months inventory. There's only like 7% of people in like behind on their payment right now anyway. So even if all of those somehow flooded the market, which I just don't see happening, it's still not going to get, I don't see it getting anything like it did in 2006, but I mean,
Yeah, maybe not, right? There's no way to tell for sure. I will say this though, I would be reaching out to those investors because if they have, equity in these houses, they could do some refi and get some more properties, right? This is the other piece of the investment piece that we'll get into deeper on is call those guys up and say, do you know that you can actually, maybe we need to be looking at a multifamily. We need to be looking at, different types of investments on that. I've also a lot of us talk about don't pay off the investment properties. Use that equity to down payment on another one. I know we're going to talk about that later on when we talk about how to leverage one piece the other. And they're saying if you're going to hold a property, do the minimum to get it done. Get somebody in there, and then use that equity to buy more. So, okay.
About it too, as we're helping somebody. Like if you're going to go after foreclosures, how can you help that family and offer them money to save their house and maybe lease it back to them, like a lease to own option?
You bet. Yeah. Guys, contribution on all of this piece. I love that, Lisa. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay,
There's
Paige.
Home Partners, just for that person who said that. It's called Home Partners of America. They buy it cash and then they lease it back to them.
Yep.
Yeah, but you can do that on your own too, which is not what I'm learning about, is how to go after like foreclosed homes and stuff like that, finding them before they hit the market, and how can you help them?
Yeah.
So
That's why it's so important, guys, to get in the database. 32% didn't pay or paid a partial of their mortgage. You should be on your database. Find out. Ask the hard questions. A lot of my clients, this is a great script. A lot of my clients have mentioned forbearance. Are you in forbearance at all? All right. Get that information so then you can check in with them and find out and say, well, do you need any help with that? Do you need support? Do you need some information? Then you can give them a resource as well. So if and when something happens and they need to get out of that house, you can be the one they call as a resource. And that's not saying, capitalize on someone's pain. It's helping them out when they need to. And Jackie, I can't remember if it was you'd mentioned about a network. Hey guys, one thing that is on my GPS right now on the investment side is reaching out to a lot of agents and asking them, if you have anything that comes on the market, will you call me immediately so I can come look at it and decide if it's something I want to buy?
One of the things I'm doing is I'm using my contractors that I use a lot, my electrician, my handyman, to look for opportunities, and I'm also bringing them in on my deals.
Yeah. You should be having this conversation with anybody who may be touching any type of real estate and saying, I am looking for investment properties. And when I'd like to have them beforehand. And this is kind of what I'm looking at. Let me know when you have that. Okay, on page 33, I will tell you something that Gary did change on this. It's in the new updated model of millionaire real estate agent. He talks about thinking like a million, but this on the investor, it's, on the millionaire real estate, he talked about giving $1 million, but let's look at the investor ones. Think $1 million, buy $1 million, own $1 million, and receive $1 million. And there still is that whole give $1 million, which I'll be honest with you, has blown my mind, and I still can't wrap my brain around it. And I think pretty big. So, okay, so we've got about 20 so minutes left, and I want to make sure we get our homework in. Homework. I love saying that because who knows that. All right, let's start looking at the myth busters or the myth understandings. They are on page 39. They talk about 8 myth understandings. We're going to go through your personal myth understandings and then the myth understandings at looking at like investment. So on page 39, it mentions your myth understandings about the way you look at yourself as an investor. And then the other part is your myth understandings about the way you look at investings. And he said, this surprised us. We thought myth understandings would be about money and investment, but the more we thought about it, the more it made sense. People generally have 2 ways of looking at anything: the way they see themselves in the world and the way they see the world and how it works. Now, I will tell you, some of these kind of hit me a little bit. I was like, what? I need to consider that, how I'm looking at it. Okay, so let's look at the first one, he's talking about the big 3, the way that we look at ourselves in investment. He said the first one is, I don't need to be an investor. My job will take care of my financial wealth. Okay, what are some thoughts on that, guys?
Hey, Kimberly, I got to make a phone call and then I'll jump back on, okay?
Sounds good.
We're all real estate agents, so I think none of us believe that.
I agree. I will tell you though, this was a big indicator when I was aligning my values with where I wanted to go at 45, right? In the career that I was really highly successful at, and my family. And this was a big piece for me because the job was only going to take care so far, and it was a job. I was working for someone.
Well,
Right.
I think Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of blows this whole myth out of the water. You know what I mean?
Don't
If you
they?
read that, then you're like, of course.
Yeah, it totally does. It totally does. And I love that piece of it. Okay. Here, I did highlight this on page 41. He said here, and it's the last paragraph. Here's the problem. And guys, remember, you guys can also be leaders for other investors. I mean, Gary Keller, he's a big investor. Yeah, what he does in this book is he says, I want more people to be more like this. They cling to a far-fetched assumption that their job will continue to provide these extraordinary streams of income. In fact, the more money people make, the more overconfident they tend to be about their financial future. Very true. If you have somebody who's making a lot of money, and I think Chaz had mentioned, don't live outside of your means, right? Enjoy your life, have fun with your life, do fun things. Listen, I'm all about experiences and doing things big, and yet there has to be a time and place for that. Look at page 42 and 43, the two different graphs. Do you guys have any thoughts on those graphs? The first one is the net worth in time, and the other one is the cash flow in time.
I think our pages might be different than you.
Oh, are they? I'm sorry.
Which page?
I have
No,
page
41.
Oh, 42 and 43. You're right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm glad to know. I hate to have different pages. This is the difference in how we're viewing ourselves, guys. Are we viewing ourselves as a true investor, a modest investor, or an income earner? I think none of us are in the income earners, right? Oh, let me let Allison back in. None of us are in the income earner piece, right? At least that's the concept I'm getting.
Yeah.
Yes, no? You can disagree.
I mean, if you don't have a real estate investment, then you're kind of still an income earner, right?
You got good point. Absolutely. Right? You got to put your toes in the water to be an investor. You can't become an investor without actually an investor.
Yeah, you can't just talk about it for the rest of your life.
So Kimberly, are you putting the properties that you get in like a trust, or you and then making like a trustee any of your children, or how are you putting your stuff?
Right now, I'm actually speaking to because I only have a couple. I have an appointment with someone to find out more about that. I have not put anything in a trust yet. Everything's in like a will, but nothing's in a very specific trust yet, or an LLC or any of that stuff. We do have people. I've been talking to some investors who will say you can put only so many properties in an LLC for a while. We'll dig deeper into that as we go through this book. Okay, good question there, Allison. I love that. Here's what I'd love for us all to do it is, how are you being a true investor? I think when we talk about before we leave here, you guys coming up with your own GPS. What does a true investor look like for you, and how and match with what you want? Because my goals are not going to be the same as your goals, and we have to put goals in place on that. Okay, myth number 2: I don't need or want to be financial wealthy. I'm happy with what I have. Jackie, there's that interview you mentioned.
Oh yeah. I don't know if that's just like a fear of failure that kind of disguises itself sometimes. Like, hey, you don't need to go for that. There's just going to be failure on the other side of that, which I don't really see myself that way, but I'm suspicious of that kind of thinking,
Mm-hmm. How many of you guys grew up? How many of you guys grew up in less means than you currently have now? Is there some programming around that in your brain?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Why wouldn't there be? If you visit anybody in that past life, do they still think the same way, or do they think like you now?
What do you mean?
Well, so I'll give you a good example.
I would say, like, for me, because I'm from a very, very small farm town, they all think the same. And
they think the same.
Yeah, because it's only like the median income's like $29,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. So I find when I go back home, they call me the city slicker, right? Because I live at, oh, she's my fancy daughter. She's my this. Like, and that's okay because she's not wrong. Yet I think different, right? I have I have 4 sisters, and one has 8 and one has 6. And they homeschool their kids, and they've got a phenomenal family. I love it. It's just not my world. They think differently. They think in the world they live in, whereas I think differently in this big world. And I'll give you a good example. I had a friend visit me who we started in real estate together. We went to the Remax together, and then we went to Keller Williams together. And she visited me recently, and I realized her growth got stunted somewhere down the line with choices she made versus where my growth and thinking was now. And we used to think almost similar. Make sense? So I think when you mention, this could be the fear piece. I think it's also programming where we grew up this way, we go this way, we live this way. You guys all are looking for something bigger and better, which is why, one, you're reading books, you're learning based, you're coachable. Lisa, I haven't forgot about you on coaching. Just a lot of different things on that piece there. So we got to think about those things. How are we thinking bigger? How are we expanding our mind?
Fear can go the other direction too. Like, I don't want to be how my parents were. So it's like, everything's going well, don't rock the boat, because you could end up not being able to feed your kids, right?
Right.
So it's like, even though the programming can push us one way, it can also hold us back in one way for really breaking through to the big money kind of thing.
Oh,
It goes
so
back
true.
to you are who you hang out with. All those people are still hanging out with the same people who are okay with the $29,000 a year, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Chaz, you and I've had this conversation multiple times, right? Chaz has a way that he wants to live his world. And then, he has people who don't live this world that way. And that's so true, guys. I did make a very conscious choice when I was in DC, and I learned about the sum of 5 people that you hang out with. And I looked around at the people I was hanging out with and letting them influence me. And not in a bad way. They were great people. And my income was much smaller. And I made a very conscious effort of who I was putting myself into place with. And I was able to increase my income and my net worth, to be honest with you. The biggest thing I would say on the story that Gary talked with a student is, if you've ever desired to help someone before and was only able to give so much, what if there was no limit on how you could help someone? And if that doesn't fire you up enough, then say, if you were to think of, if tomorrow you were to win the lottery and you thought of the one thing you'd want to go out and buy that would just be like, this would be it. I mean, I think it's okay to think that way too. And the agents who know me know that I have a convertible Bentley in my future. So, all right.
Mine would be a RV, so I can travel all over and be wherever I want.
I love it. See, we all have our thing, right? Okay, let's get to number 3, which is, it doesn't matter if I want or need it. I just can't do it. You can't predict what you can or can't do until you try. There's no way for you or anyone else, for that matter, to know your true financial potential. I believe if we took a snapshot of today of where you think your financial potential is now, and a snapshot just 2 years from now, it would look completely different. What I'm setting up in my world is to double what I did my best year in a year, right? Any thoughts on that myth that hits you?
Well, Michelle, she did one of our morning calls. I can't remember if it was Tuesday, I think it was last week, but she talked about at the very beginning of her career, she had a mentor who set her down and showed her exactly the layout of how she was going to get to that. And so how that was her goal. And then I think it's Chase, or I can't remember who's on this call, but he was saying, you speak it out loud, and that's what she kept doing.
Mm-hmm. You do. You speak it out loud. That's so true. Hey, Chaz, I just saw you mention, oh, sorry, Allison.
No, I was just going to say, so for me, I think it's sitting down with someone who's like Michelle, who's been there, done that, and, shadow a person maybe for a few days or once a week, something like that.
Yeah. You bet. I think, guys, somebody mentioned to me today, how do you start to get yourself to think differently, or to put yourself in people's world that you understand it? I have zero fear of asking someone for something, meaning, hey, I love what you're doing. Can I have a conversation with you? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I spend 10 minutes with you? Can I ask a question? And you know, that's so that I can build my world bigger. And that's how I got into this guru. The people who I'm in my little wealth building group, they have currently more net worth than I do. So I'm not the smartest one at the table. I just haven't told them that yet. So yeah, I come up with passion and potential, and I will make it happen. I love the graph on 53, and it's all about language. You guys are brilliant, by the way. This is just such a fun group. I'm so happy that you guys are all on here. It's talking about probabilities versus possibilities, and there's a lot in the language. What's likely for me, what's realistic for me versus what's conceivable and what's imaginable. Like just some different wording on that piece there. All right, let's go ahead and skip to, and then if you didn't really pay attention to the multiplying effect, how it can work for you, did you guys understand that? The ability versus the talent versus the, ability, time, and money. Did you guys understand that graph? It's on page, it goes on page 57 and 58, and it talks about how when you work on certain areas, how much more it multiplies in your investment potential. You don't always have to have everything perfect. You can do just a little bit of each. Yet if you start to multiply the three, bigger in potential. Yeah? Kinda. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming I still have.
Well, I did see in the office today what you on the board, what you focus on expands. I saw that one on the bold board.
I love it. Yeah, what you focus on expands. Love that. That's one of my favorite ones, by the way. Okay, we're going to get to the last one, this last section, then we're going to set up things. So any of the myths on here, investing is complicated. Guys, we're going to make it simple. Now, I believe you have to put some time and effort to it. You have to understand. I think you guys have both said, you know, what is this for me? You know, how much should I look into this? What does that look like? The best investments require knowledge most people don't have. No. If I can figure it out, you guys definitely can figure it out. Investing is risky. I'll lose my money. I love how he put the definition. Invest is to commit in order to gain a financial return. There's no risk involved. I mean, there is risk involved. Let's not be ridiculous. And it's not in the definition. And let's see, there's two more. Successful investors are able to time the market. I still think there's tons of opportunity right now in this market, even at a hot market, guys. You just need to be finding the people who are willing, who know what's going on. One thing that we have discovered in our group is that we've got to get something before it hits the market. That's not when the investment happens, depending on what you want. You got to get it before it hits the market. So that's the network of people. Who are you reaching out to on a regular basis to say, hey, do you have any investments? And then remind them.
Yeah. I know myself in the past 2 months, I've had 2 flip properties that were amazing that I actually considered. But one of them was making me way too nervous. And then the other one was just a little too far. I mean, I 30 showings in 2.5 days on it. I was exhausted with the calls. But yeah, I'm more like you. I'd rather, you know, be like a hold investor versus a flip. Even though I've flipped my own home and fixed it up, it's still a different thing.
A different concept.
Yeah, I want to be able to not be managing all these contractors and everybody.
So me and the group of our group, we've talked about one of us will find the deal. One of us will control all of the, we'll all have different parts of it. I can flip a property with a team. I just don't have the resources right now to flip it on my own, right? So if you want to flip, you need to have that resource there. So when you have it, you can get it started and have it done quickly.
Yeah, I'm actually going tomorrow. We're going to Key West for the weekend with my tax financial advisor, and we are going to be looking at homes down there as a potential VRBO.
Nice. I like it.
Perfect timing.
It is perfect timing. I love that. The last myth, all good investments are taken. That's so not true. That's just so not true, period. Anything. All right, any questions on the myths before we talk about what we're going to do next? Okay, What are some ahas that you got just from our little session today? And then I'm going to map out what next week, what's not next week. So I'm giving you 2 weeks to read. So please don't wait till the day before to read. Read beforehand. And what are some ahas that you got from today?
I love the whole idea of when, having a home for each child, if they go to college, refinance it to help pay for it. I mean, their kids' school's paid for college, but not the dorm, not the books, not.
Right.
So I wrote that down really big.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Okay, what else?
Keep communicating with people that are wanting to do the same like business as I.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Okay, what else?
Yeah, I mean, and just bring to top of mind and focusing on that and realizing that this is the really the end result, right? Because what I found in being in real estate, it seems like every estate is only in real estate for a certain period of time, and then they want to get out of production, because it's a lot of work when you start getting busy. And I think someone mentioned it before, they had all these I mean, I had a listing the other day, I was like, anyway. So yeah, I mean, this is the end goal, right? I want to be passively earning money, in multiple streams, but primarily in real estate. And if I can get there, then I mean, the rest is just gravy. And like, so opening this just dialogue back up is just exciting, for me.
Love it. I love it. That's a great aha. Okay, anybody else want to share? Awesome. Okay, we're going to move a little faster as we go through this. I just wanted to start out this first call this way, and we didn't have anybody to interview. We will have someone. I've already got a couple to interview, one couple to interview. I'm looking at a second one. We won't dig in deep in each one of the areas. I'm just going to trust you're going to read it. We will go through different areas, so I'd love to hear your ahas, and we'll kind of skip through them. I'd like each one of you guys to put together a GPS. What would you want your investment portfolio to look like? You can do it for a year from now. You can do it for 5 years from now. Let's get a vision of where you want to go. And I'd love for you to share that. I also would love for everybody to shoot me an email at kimberlyhorn@kw.com. I can pop it in the chat. It's just my first and last name at KW. Just so that I can communicate with you. If there's someone who you thought was going to be on and couldn't be on, feel free to remind them this. We're going to do this every 2 weeks. That's the goal. And here's what I'd love to get us through for next week, is to get us through all of the Think a Million and the models. So we're really going to take it and go through page through the 12, which is going to give you it's going to give you another 100 pages to read. Okay, so between now and there, you're due 194, total of 194 pages. Again, if you don't get a chance to read, don't not show up, because there's value to be added from that. So we're going to go through 12 is what our goal is, so that we can go through the models a little bit as well. So what we'll do is we'll spend the first part of our call on the thinking like a millionaire, of a real millionaire real estate agent, and we'll be going through the models a little bit. And if we have add extra time, we'll add extra time. That's not a big deal. Any questions?
What chapter? Because I'm on the Kindle and the pages are totally different than what you're like describing.
What I'm telling you, right? The chapter, let's see if it tells me the chapter. It's called the lead gen model.
Okay.
So you want to read the lead gen model.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to stop at the how to find. Okay. Yeah, the Kindle's a little different, right? It didn't tell you that. It just tells you, yeah. So, okay. So homework is read through that area. The second one is email me. Just shoot me a quick email so I can kind of I don't have all y'all's emails. I have some of you guys. And then the third thing is get your GPS together of where you want your investments. Now you can put one like, this is where I'd like to be in a year. This is where I like to be. Well, however you want to do it. Let's just start putting some, do you want to flip? Do you want to hold? It'll get you to start thinking about what kind of investor you'd like to be. And I want to add one piece. I think you had mentioned it. We're looking at some flips to have some seed money for something bigger that may open up in the future. That's a big thing. So I just don't have all the people together for that yet. And we're looking at a flip to say, let's do something flip and hold the money for whatever could be out there. So that could be a strategy for you as well, as how am I going to how am I gonna create a lot of seed money for something that's bigger? Okay, any thoughts, questions? Was this helpful? Shake a head. No,
Yes, thank
I
you.
don't know.
Thank you. Yes, it was awesome.
Good. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. This is a lot of fun for me. So,
I've been
I
wanting
look-
Thank you,
for a
Kimberly.
long time, and this
Thank you.
that was exactly what I needed to actually do it.
Nice shirt, Brian. You see our shirts?
I know you guys are
Yeah.
matching.
Brian's older sister and I were like BFFs in middle school. In high school.
That's awesome.
Small world.
I know.
Good to see you, Julia.
Okay, anybody else? Hey, Elizabeth, we get to see your face. Hi, darling.
Sorry, running errands, so I didn't think you guys wanted to be in store, you know what I mean, all over. But this is great because I listened to it. I'm brand new since July 1st, and I listened to it, and I really wanted to hear insight and help with it, and it's just really neat. I love how the gentleman, is it Chris? I don't know, said he states and put on his business card, I'm an investor.
I'm
Just-
an investor.
That was
Brian
my
did that.
aha. That was my
Good,
aha.
good one. I love it. You guys go out, have a wonderful day. Thank you for spending time with me. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.